If you're working with n8n and for instance with APIs from Google and you get a 400 free, which means forbidden, but the issue is not an expired token and instead it's the fact that the token is missing a specific scope, then this does not mean that you have to create another credential and instead you have to update it. And to make that more clear based on an example, let's say I want to use services such as BigQuery, Google Analytics, Sheets, and Gmail. Then of course I can also create specific credentials because this is also supported by n8n and I don't have to set the scope because this is done in the background. But let's say you want to connect to the Google Search Console API, or you want to control what kind of operations will be possible with this specific credential. Then you can control that by using scopes. And as an example, here we have in green scopes. The blue part is a credential which you would create, for instance, in n8n. And the red cards are permissions. And let's say I create a Google OAuth2 credential with the scopes for Gmail, for the indexing API, and let's say also for Google Sheets. Then this credential will allow me to send emails, read emails, delete emails, but also submit data for indexing or read and list Google Sheets. So that means instead of having different credentials, I can also use a single credential, add say all the scopes I need, and then I will be able to use different services from Google by using a single credential. And creating such a credential is actually really easy. The only thing you have to do is to create either here a new credential, or if you are using the HTTP node, then you can also set the authentication to a predefined credential type and then set it to Google OAuth2 API. And creating the credential is actually really similar to creating a credential, for instance, for Google Sheet. You will need your client ID, client secret, and then you have also another field for the scope. And right now the scope is set for spreadsheets read only. So I will be able to use this credential, for instance, to list available Google spreadsheets, but I won't be able to fetch any data from the Google Search Console API because it's missing the specific scope, which also means if I execute it, then it will throw the error that the scope is missing. But I have also another credential, which is here. So it's from the same type. But if we have a look into the scopes, then we can see that the scope is for the Google Search Console API. And if I execute this node here, then it works. And now you might ask yourself, why do I need it? And let's say you have an automation where you want to fetch data from the Google Search Console, submit pages for indexing, and eventually save the result in a Google Sheet. Then you can create a single credential. And the only thing you have to update is here in the scope field, the specific scopes. And you can also find all of them in the documentation from Google. And as an example, if I want to get data from the Google Search Console, then I can use this scope here or also this one. But with this scope, I wouldn't be able to write any data because it's read-only. And let's say you also want to use this credential for indexing, then you can simply search here for indexing. And then on the right, find the right service, which is here. And then you know, okay, if I want to use this credential to submit a page for Google indexing, then I need to copy the scope here, go back to my credential, add a space, and then paste the scope. And it's also really important that you're adding here a space and not a new line. Otherwise, the credential will throw an error. And of course, what's really important if you're going to update a credential is that you also do the authentication process again. As an example, this one here won't work. But if I add here for the Google Search Console API, the credential, and then let's say read only, because the only thing I want to do is to fetch data from the Google Search Console, so performance data. Then I copy it, go back to the credential, add a space here, paste it, click on sign in with Google, then go through the authentication process, accept it, and then the new token will have also the new scope. And if I now execute it, then it should work. And as you can see, it worked because now the new token has also another scope. That means whenever you face the error that the scope is missing, then the first thing you need to do is to check what kind of operation are you performing. So are you reading data, writing data, or maybe also deleting data? Then the second step is to go to the documentation. So in case it's an API from Google, then it would be this documentation. But many services are using OAuth2, for instance, also GitHub. And then the only thing you have to do is to find the right scope, add it to the credential, re-authenticate, and then the credential should work. And that's it for the video. In case you have any questions regarding credentials or something similar, then feel free to add it to the comments. And we will see each other in the next video.